you're enjoying MicroFocus Universe so far. I'm Gary Brandt, and I'm a product manager with Operation Bridge. In this session, we're going to dive into some new innovation that we're building into our operational dashboards. So let's take a look.
Last year at MicroFocus Universe, we introduced the Optic platform on which Operation Bridge is built. You may be familiar with the broad cross-domain data collectors that feed into our Optic Data Lake, our analytic big data database, on which we offer a variety of services that provide insight for different IT operational use cases. This year, we're introducing new innovation on Optic, focusing on our user experience. We have built a new UI framework that is being used to refresh, redesign, and used in new product dashboards and user interfaces across service assurance. This unifying framework is being applied to Network Operations Manager, Operation Bridge, as well as APM and some new monitoring configuration products. UIF enables a true unified experience for users, allowing them to seamlessly traverse between and among different service assurance products with a global context that can be applied to different dashboards. As shown here, a user can navigate within the NOM dashboards as well as among other suites. UIF has also been used to enable the new OBM user interface, which is currently available in beta in SaaS. UIF enables the visualization of a variety of data, as shown here with the time series data charts in NOM's performance troubleshooter dashboards. In addition to refreshing and redesigning existing product dashboards, UIF is also being used in net new features. Here at MicroFocus Universe, we are introducing Monitoring Control Center, or MCC. MCC unifies monitoring configuration across multiple monitoring products. It provides a new way to organize your monitors in a flexible hierarchy to better align with your organization. MCC optimizes workflows across multiple monitoring provider instances, and it uses common services like IDM across them. It also helps improve integration using modern architecture design. The first monitoring application that we're applying MCC to is our agentless monitoring technology, also known as Sitescope. Today, admins and operators have to connect to each individual Sitescope instance in their organization separately to manage them. They also need to do this either through a classic UI, which requires browser plugins, or use a local client on their desktop. They also have to do cross-domain tasks manually, like importing and exporting monitors between and among different instances of Sitescope. MCC addresses a lot of these shortcomings of the current Sitescope configuration with its ability to centralize all the Sitescope instances into one unified view. This view is built on the UIF framework, which is 100% HTML5. It's a very modern and clean user interface. It also allows central viewing and configuring of monitors across multiple Sitescope. The Monitoring Control Center is built on an architecture that is containerized and built on microservices that allows it to scale much differently than the classic architecture of Sitescope's UI. It also uses common services like IDM. The deployment can be a small footprint and scale out as needed. And MCC can be used with multiple Sitescopes or with a single instance of Sitescope. So here's a look at MCC for Sitescope, or agentless monitoring. Right away, you can see it's a much cleaner interface. It also has a lot of features that Sitescope can't do today, like bringing in multiple views of different Sitescope instances and allowing you to organize them in a very flexible tree structure. It also allows you to create and configure and update monitors via templates. It also allows you to view the properties and details of each of your monitors. You can do many of the features that you can do in the classic Sitescope UI, such as ad hocly run monitors, enable or disable monitors, or alerting, as well as check the monitoring status of the metrics that you're monitoring. So when it comes time to configure or change settings in your monitors, MCC makes this really easy. When you select a monitor from one of your SiteScope instances in the tree on the left-hand side, MCC will present just the information and the workflow required to make those configuration changes. For example, in this URL monitor, you can see the workflow that you would walk through to change the respective configuration settings, such as threshold settings. When you select threshold settings, you'll be presented with all the default conditions that you can then update and change to your custom conditions. After saving the changes you make, MCC will relay those changes to the respective SiteScope instance that's hosting that monitor that you're executing in production. We have been running a beta version of MCC with some select customers, and we're pleased to have one of our customers join us today to share some of his experiences and feedback on MCC for SiteScope with us. I'm pleased to introduce Tom Santinello from Castello Systems. Tom is the chief architect there. So hi, Tom. Thanks for joining us today. Tom, you're the chief architect at Castello Systems, where you use MicroFocus ITOM technologies. Can you tell us about Castello Systems and your role as chief architect?
Sure. We're a small service-disabled veteran-owned business. We've been around since 2004. Our primary focus really is on in the U.S. federal space on a variety of different ITOM implementations. We really address the full lifecycle support. We really focus on large global deployments. That's really become our sweet spot over time. Trying to make sure that, in complicated environments that we can go out there and actually make good use of all the different tools that the customer is actually using. My role as the chief architect really is to kind of lead the whole overall engineering effort, focus on, emerging technologies, both in terms of what the customer is bringing into the space, which is obviously a very quick and dynamic environment. The customer always wants new things, and we have to stay on top of that, as well as from the ITOM space and a variety of different tools, what we can bring to the table that helps the customer get some better visibility. One of our core competencies, which is, I'll mention it a couple of times probably as we go through these questions, I would think, is SLA monitoring and reporting. All of these contracts have some type of SLAs out there that through all the different tools, we've got to get that information pulled in, report on it somehow, and that's how we get paid a lot of times.
Great. Sounds like you have your hands full there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you briefly describe how Castello uses SiteScope, our agentless monitoring technology, with some of your clients today?
Sure. As I mentioned, a lot of times what we're focused on are global, large global deployments. As an example, one of our deployments today, we've got 20 pairs of SiteScopes deployed throughout the globe to try to capture all the information we need to. Some of them are pretty heavily loaded. We've got up to 3,000 monitors on a couple of them, so there's a lot going on there. As far as what we're looking at, it's really the full infrastructure from, basic nuts and bolts stuff, system monitoring, application monitoring, SLA monitoring, I mentioned that as well. Basic services such as, up, down, you can't get away from that, obviously, DNS, LDAP, URLs. Lots of WMI and SSH type monitoring through SiteScope as well. So much of what we focus on are custom applications, business applications that the customer builds in-house, and trying to get the right kind of visibility for, availability, response time, end user issues, and everything else that all comes into play. We do use OVM. We integrate SiteScope and OVM in all cases, so for both topology and events. So all of that output obviously is rolled up into the OVM world, and that's really what our operations centers are focused on more than anything else in order to try to get some visibility of where we have issues.
Gotcha. When it comes to configuring SiteScope, can you describe some of the challenges that you face today?
Sure. Certainly the Java applet and whatnot is problem number one, as I'm sure it is for most customers. And even with the local client, it doesn't get us over the hump. As I mentioned, on that one implementation, we got 20 SiteScope pairs out there, so 40 SiteScopes total. We also deal with multiple air gap networks in a lot of places, so that means anything we do is times 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And imagine for a second sitting there trying to manage 20 local clients all at once because you're doing work on all 20 of them trying to deploy a new service or monitor for new service. That's tough. And even with the local client, you still run into the variety of job issues as the customer puts more and more security in place and everything else. So clearly, problem number one. I think that the Sitescope UI, while it served us well over the years, I mean, it's dated, and it doesn't always lend itself to the best, in a large implementation, the best way to organize what you're doing. And once again, if you've got multiple instances out there, whatever structure you put in place in Sitescope, well, you got to replicate that out there. So that becomes quite a challenge as well.
Yeah. So Castello System recently tried a beta version of our MCC for Sitescope in your environment. As a longtime Sitescope user, I imagine you were receptive to seeing the new MCC user experience, but can you tell us what your impression was with the new UI redesign?
Yeah, I mean, we were excited from day one when we first heard about it, and definitely made a pitch to get into the EPR testing because we really thought this was going to address a lot of the problems we have. The amount of time and amount of engineers we have trying to manage the Sitescopes across these large environments is just tremendous. So the notion of having one console that we can manage everything in, I mean, that was just a huge win. We did look at trying to use the APIs to do some configuration or what have you, and it never got off the ground. I mean, quite frankly, it didn't get off the ground just because we're spending so much time doing operations. So we didn't have time to do some of the automations we went. But you can imagine if you're trying to manage things like multiple remote servers, from different Sitescopes, the same one, password changes, right, that kind of stuff. That's a big problem. So this we were really super excited about trying to jump on here and do this. All right. So after several rounds of the EPR testing, I mean, we couldn't be happier at this point. I mean, from day one, I think everything was well thought out. The interactions we had with the design team in terms of how we did business, other feedback they brought from other customers and how they did business, I think really lends itself towards a well thought out product. It has worked from day one. More and more functionality was added to it. We don't have any response time issues when we get in there. When we tried to think about how we wanted to use it in terms of how we organize data, I mean, everything just kind of fell into place. So, yeah, we really absolutely think this is a good effort.
That's great. So like Castello, many of our customers run multiple Sitescope instances in their environments. Some tell us that with the classic Sitescope, they find it difficult to organize Sitescope monitors into logical groups that kind of best represent their IT environments or their support structures and things like that. They also tell us that they do not have an overall view of all of their Sitescope monitors, and let alone able to manage them from a single point. Are these challenges that your clients face with running, I think you said 20 or so many Sitescope servers in that many instances in a production environment?
Yeah, and I think I touched on some of that in the previous comments. That absolutely is a part of it, right? So it's not just the fact that I can go into one console and say, okay, well, I want to configure this monitor and then deploy it to these 3 locations. I think just the notion of being able to organize that data across the globe, since we have a global deployment, both by service, location, whatever makes sense, right? We can do that. So yes, I believe this is definitely the right approach to try to go ahead and get that right level of visibility. We've had discussions about, just being able to see all of them in one place, understand a little notion of, okay, well, which ones have which type of the service in there, rather than going from one Sitescope to another, or building custom reporting to capture that. So yes, this is good.
That's great. When we GA MCC for Sitescope in our next release, do you think your customers will see value and decide to choose to implement Sitescope?
100%. I mean, this is no brainer. From what we've seen so far, on the day we get those bits, it goes into production. What we've seen so far is it's that stable of a product from day one, and yeah, this is going to really make us much more effective and efficient.
So While MCC for SiteScope is our first OpsBridge product where we're using MCC, it's not the last. We're working on bringing MCC for BPM to market, where customers who manage both SiteScope and BPM monitors in their environment will have a single common place and user experience to configure their monitors. Some of your clients use both SiteScope and BPM. What advantages do you see this unified solution like MCC would have for them?
So I think there's a lot of parallels there. I mean, certainly trying to deal with the Java APIs, Java UIs, whatnot, that's a problem, right? So, getting rid of that, getting into a standard platform, that all makes sense. We have on that one large deployment, for example, we've got 12 probes in place today, and it's not a huge effort to try to manage those. We primarily do VDI login measurements is actually the use case for an SLA. And the reason I bring that up is because we never got really past that point. So I think there's a side benefit here that once BPM is rolled in there, it's going to put us in a position to be able to do a heck of a lot more BPM type monitoring, which we want that, the customer wants it, needs it, and everything else. So, we now have one platform. We can say, okay, well, we have a gap over here. We can use BPM to either augment something SiteScope's doing or replace it outright. So I think that rolling it in there, not only do we get past some of the problems we have today, it's going to make our BPM deployment that much, much better than what we have today. I think that's going to be a real win.
That's great to hear. Well, Tom, hey, that's all the time we have today, but thank you for your time. Any last comments on MCC?
Just to reiterate what I said before, I think this is a game changer in a large deployment. I mean, this is clearly it's going to make us a lot more effective, efficient, and the most important part, bring a lot more value to the customer, I think, in terms of, giving them some good visibility, because we are going to be able to move much quicker and get that visibility that we're lacking in some places. So yeah, this is a good one, Gary.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Well, I hope you enjoyed the rest of Universe, and it was nice talking with you.
Thank you, Gary. Good talking to you.
Okay, you heard a lot about MCC today, and you're probably wondering when it's going to be available and when you can get your hands on it. So we are coming out with MCC for remote monitoring. That's MCC for SiteScope, the initial GA release in this coming spring. So this is going to be in the 2205 release. At the same time, we are also bringing to market MCC for cloud monitoring. This is for our AWS hyperscale monitoring service. And we are also going to have a beta version of MCC for BPM. Now, in the release after next, and this would be our fall release or the 2211 release, we will have a follow-up release for MCC remote monitoring. That's MCC for SiteScope, where we'll bring some of the monitors that we couldn't get into the initial release, as well as some other capabilities. And in that release, we will be GAing MCC for BPM. Now, looking beyond 2022, we will continue to introduce or continue to bring additional capabilities of MCC for remote monitoring for SiteScope to market, as well as additional capabilities of MCC for BPM. We will also be introducing MCC for cloud monitoring for Azure. So this will be the new hyperscale monitor for Azure service monitoring services. And we're also going to introduce MCC for other monitoring tools like RUM, or real user monitoring. So that's a little bit of a roadmap glimpse of what's coming and when you'll be able to get your hands on MCC for these tools, and hopefully you can take that into your planning. So after we begin to release MCC for different monitoring tools, you will be able to see the vision that we talked about at the beginning of this session, where you'll have that unified feel across all the different monitoring products, all within one unified and common user experience. And this is a glimpse of how this may look, where from a single MCC console, you can see how you can see site scope monitors and BPM monitors all within the same user interface and be able to configure those directly in the same UI. And also things like common IDM, common services, things like role-based access and things like that, all will be common and applied to the monitor types that MCC works with. So this is really that unifying experience in action that we are working towards. Okay, if you found this session interesting, then please check out some of our other Operation Bridge sessions at MicroFocus Universe. You can find them here on the right-hand side. Also, if you're looking for additional information on Operation Bridge, please check out this link where you can find all kinds of resources and information to learn more about Operation Bridge.
So thanks for joining. Hopefully now you have a better understanding of our new UI framework and MCC, or Monitoring Control Center. We hope that you enjoy the rest of MicroFocus Universe. Thanks.
Get social with us. Twitter, LinkedIn, Get Social, MicroFocus Universe.